Hello, it's Andrew Eborn here with more live and exclusive content in association with KTT and GSI. Join me after this break. Welcome back. It's Andrew Eborn here with another edition of Live and in Conversation. I'm delighted to be joined again by Blue Weaver. Hello, Blue.
Hi, Andrew.
Last time we spoke, it was an emotional roller coaster. We talked about your early career, the different bands you've been involved with, and also your life with the Bee Gees. And it was quite an emotional moment when it came to an end. It's very personal. You obviously lived on the road for a long time. And I said it's very much like being in a marriage. And I think you came to the realization that those days it's no longer possible to bring back.
Definitely not. It was always a dream of mine to one day perform again. First of all, with Andy and the brothers, which we'd done before, and Andy died, and that was a shock. So that was one realization that something I knew that wasn't going to be possible anymore. But there was Barry, Robin, and Maurice, and I always had this vision of one day performing with them, if not on my own, but maybe with Alan and Dennis as well, and just doing one more performance, just like we used to. And then Maurice died, and so there again, that was another part of my dream shattered. But then Robin and Barry were there, and I thought there would be hope. And in fact, there was a chance that I may have been recording again, but that didn't happen. But then I heard Robin died, and that totally shattered the dream. There was no way then that me with the Bee Gees would ever be able to perform. I was trying to explain today. I posted the video, and I'll read out what I put because I think it says it better than me trying to just say it off the top of my head, because I was quite pleased with what I thought. I was living in Spain. It was the 21st of May, 2012, when I heard that Robin had died the previous day. For days after that, the realization that there was now only one brother left, it really haunted me. After Maurice died, I realized that I would never be able to fulfill my dream of ever playing again with the brothers. But I did hope that there was a possibility of performing with Robin and Barry. But again, my dream was shattered. I heard a quote. I'm not sure where it came from, but instantly it made the situation clear. That the quote I heard, I'm not sure where it came from, was "We are one." Now, I'm not a lyricist or a singer. I've worked with so many greats I never needed to be, and writing words never came naturally to me. In fact, just picking up a pen and paper is difficult. But it just came to me all in one go. I picked up a pen and I picked up a paper and I wrote down, I'm standing on this stage alone, another spirit not yet flown. But when I look around, I see all my brothers standing next to me and singing harmony. And when that final song is sung, then we are one. I then sat down at the piano, and like the words, the melody, it just flowed, it just came out of me. I don't know how. I think having written songs before, I love playing in E flat. How Deep Is Your Love is in E flat. Another song I wrote with them, The Way We Were, The Way It Was. I always got confused with that because of the title. That was in E flat also. So E flat is just a beautiful sound on a piano. Somebody told me it has all these soft overtones and it sounds really nice. So I sat down at the piano and I came up with this melody that is in the video. I tried writing other words, but nothing touched me as much as that final verse that I had written. And I realized really there was only one person who could finish it and sing it. I always imagined this would be an orchestral track, maybe with some piano. hopefully one day it will be completed. I'm never happy with my performances of it, as I really wish there was someone, and I put that someone there to sing it with me. I believe now, more than ever, especially with what's happening around the world, we need to stand together as one.
Is absolutely right, and beautiful words, Blue. And in fact, it was in 1976. It's the words on the US continental dollar coins is "We are one."
Really?
So you might have had it from there. And it was also Obama's inauguration in 2009.
Oh,
Again, he says, "We are one."
gosh, I never consciously was aware of that. Um, yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, so it's something goes in and
Oh, no,
stays there, and then
that's the
it
great thing.
gets out.
We spoke in our last interview about influences and how the world basically, even in the worst situation, can actually provide the greatest inspiration for good.
Yes,
And it's
and
clearly got a big emotional impact on you as well.
it is. I mean, when I heard there was a movie going to be made, I I had this vision. I just thought, God, you know, imagine if the movie ended with that, and the stage just went, you know, there's only one brother left, and the stage goes dark. That was my, you know, when I wrote the song and everything, that wasn't the vision. It was just the fact that there was, you know, I now we are one. It was really special because the four of them were one. Well, especially the three, it was one. The Bee Gees, you know, or it's I could never imagine, even if they weren't together, like they split it sometimes. They're brothers. They would always be together. They would always be one.
And I think that's the really important message because so often in this life, we realize things too late. And what
Yeah,
this extraordinary situation has done for people is to make them value the stuff which they may not have valued before.
exactly. And makes you think back on your life and um, you think how foolish you've been in some situations. And um, I, I heard somebody say once, it was a musician, I can't remember, but he went for an interview and they said, and what about now? What were you? You were going like that. And he said, I'm here to talk about my future, not talk about my past. You know about that, you know. And but situations like this really make us reflect on our past, I think, as well, and also because we don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah. And people always say, and it applies in every situation, and history repeats itself, which is why I was reminded about the 1776 dollar, and I thought that's helpful because people have the same idea. History repeats itself, but people very rarely learn the lessons of history.
Sorry, you
By, and by that, I mean,
learn.
people always say, look, we understand this is what happens. We know if only I'd been given one more opportunity to say goodbye or to say that I'm sorry or to say that I love you or any of those sort of moments. Now is the
Yeah,
time to say what you always wanted to say.
yeah. It's like you don't want to. What method? What? Once you're dead and once you have a funeral, you get these people saying, "Oh, what a wonderful person he was. What happened? This." Why can't they tell you in while you're alive so you can hear it? You know, I mean, you most probably know it, but things like that always. I always think, what's the point? Um, if you feel that way about somebody, then why didn't you say when you had the chance when they were alive?
And I've been, and I'm sure you have as well, at many funerals and things like that, and you hear the most amazing thing about people, and you didn't know that's how people felt.
Yes, yeah,
So, with that in mind, if you did have an opportunity to say what you wanted to say to Robin or to Maurice or to Barry, who's maybe listening to this now, what would you want to say?
I'd say we were real, we were real stupid bastards, and we should have known that what we experienced back then. It, it's always going to be there, and I think we always think back on it on it fondly. And I think the main reason things like this happen is when you live in different countries, and maybe now with the way we can communicate, if that had been around in the 80s, then possibly all these situations wouldn't have got out of hand. We could really speak to people once things have blown up and then calmed down again. You can talk again. And I did actually meet them again. I think it was about 1986. I was in Mayfair Studios, and it was quite funny. I didn't know they were there, and Barry, well, I used to drink a lot of tea as well, and Barry did. Barry always drinks a lot of tea, or did in the past. And there was a kitchen area there, which was part of the main lobby come relaxation area. And he was making a cup of tea, and I stood there, and I walked up and I stood by the side. And he must have sensed I've been looking there, and he said, 2 sugars, is it? No. It was like as if, it was like yesterday, as if nothing had happened in between. And in fact, I went in, I couldn't stay, I was actually working, but I went in and said hello to everybody, and then that was it. And I'm trying to think, Barry's 50th birthday, when that would have been, what year, whether that was before I played with them finally. But I don't know what to say. I mean, it's really hard. I'm not a great one for. I don't know. I just think the whole situation was silly. Lives go into different directions, and we just lost touch. I was living back in London, and they were mainly in Miami. Or I don't know. It's hard to know what to say. I mean, it would have been nice to have all 4 of them there and then talk, and not really have to say anything. Just that's it. We're back together. We're back together. We're talking, and forget about things that happened in the past. Just carry on from the good times.
Well, Barry's 50th birthday was in fact on the 1st of September, 1996.
1996. So that would have been, yeah. So I saw them in Mayfair before then. But as I said before, that 1996, that was on his birthday, or that time, that was the last time I got to play with the 3 of them. Yeah.
And people always talk about, and I say this is a time of reflection when people are sitting at home and with sort of locked down, if you like, when some people are left alone with their thoughts, and they turn around and say, well, these are the regrets in my life. What could I do differently? So if you were talking back to the younger Blue Weaver at that sort of stage, what advice would you give yourself?
Most probably not to talk too much and think what I was saying before it came out of my mouth. It's hard to know what advice to give yourself. Always other people can give you advice, but because I don't know, a lot of the time when I look back, most probably I could have handled situations differently. But there again, I'm uh, I've never um, I saw so many. I mean, when you're in a position like the Bee Gees, and you're so successful and you become so famous, uh, you see so many people that the way that they treat them, it, it's 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 not normal in a way. You know, they're not treated like normal people. Um, they're treated more like gods and things. You know, they're worshipped almost. You know, and I saw so many times people that were supposed to be friendly. These were people closely connected that oh, you know, would bend down and kiss their asses, to be blunt. And then when you see them in another situation, they're they're not so nice about the whole thing, and that really that really used to get to me because I always thought if um, I was never consciously trying ever to be nice to them or to any, you know, like you said, what about when you bump into famous people and things like this? Do you look up to them? Do you feel in awe? And I thought no, because like you say, they're normal people. You admire what they've done, but they're no different than you. They're no different than anybody else. Maybe they're more talented in some way, but basically and you know they're the same, so you shouldn't really have to treat them differently, and you shouldn't have to um, uh, everybody gets temperamental, everybody has an ego, but you shouldn't always have to feel as if you have to fulfill that ego, or you have to treat that temperament gently. You know, I think I used to be terrible in the studio sometimes. I would really, if I thought something had to be one way, I know I used to drive them crazy. I would, I would, I would try and make people see that that was the way. I wasn't frightened, or if something was wrong, if somebody wasn't singing right, you know, I, um, I never worried about saying to Barry, Robin, or Maurice, even though I'm not a singer, you can hear that maybe they can do it in a different way, and maybe it could be better. And eventually, maybe they'd find that, you know. But maybe I was a bit impatient sometimes, and I would always do that. But I was never worried about speaking my mind, you know, saying anything.
And I think the important thing as well, Blue, is that people forget that actually we're all human. If you prick us, do we not bleed?
Yeah, of course, you know. I've always thought, oh, I haven't got an ego, I'm not this and all that. But I mean, I have, I'm damn sure I have, you know. I'm looking at myself now thinking, oh, my beard needs trimming a little bit. And it's grown actually in the last 6 hours that you've kept me here. I
Oh,
think,
yeah. I think you had no beard at all when we started. But
oh,
I think, but that's the other thing as well, is that when, I mean, there's two things happen. When people meet their idols, they're either incredibly disappointed or they lose about 20% of their intelligence because they don't know what to say.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I've had the real honor of meeting the great and the good every walks of life. And what I find is that people are the same. There's some great people in every walk of life, and there's some people who are not so wonderful in every walk of life.
Yeah, there's some out there that we've all met. But yeah, I mean, when we had a party in what's the disco place? Studio 54, is it in New York?
Yeah.
I never actually went there. Only went there for this party once. I think I may have been there at some other point, but I don't remember. But it was a big party thrown for Saturday Night Fever. So many stars, so many people there. But the upstairs part was left. You had to have a special pass to get up there, you know, all access or whatever. And it was pretty quiet up there, and they were serving some nice drinks and food. and it was more relaxing than all was going on. Crazy. I mean, it was absolutely crazy. So I went up there with my wife, and we were sat there, and it was a round table. I remember it was quite big. There weren't that many people there, but I think it was I don't know whether it was the only table or what, I can't remember. But this guy came to me, he said, "Excuse me, is anybody sitting there?" And I said, "No." I said, "Oh, thank you." And then he went like this. And guy came over and sat down. I looked, and he said, "Oh, hello. Well, thank you for letting me sit at the table and everything." And I said, "Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome." It was Al Pacino. You know.
Yeah. And I think what you find, and he's wonderful, Al, and I think what you find is that the more famous people are, the more secure they are in themselves. And I think what I tend to find is a lot of people, maybe on the way up, they're a little bit nervous, or on the way down, they're a little bit nervous again. But it's so rare. This is such a fickle business, isn't it? That
It is. You know,
it's very
everybody
rare they
says.
stay at top for a long time.
I mean, I was in a band for a couple of months with somebody, and the guy was always difficult to work with, always, you know, for everybody. But initially I had fun there, and then there were too many drugs and too many things happening, and I just quit, and I couldn't stand it anymore. And then the guy went solo, and he's been singing around. He's been around a long time. Then about 6 years ago, he came here to Volkswagen, to the music hall, and I thought, oh, I'll go. And I went, and we talked, and he was fine. You know, I thought, oh, great, he's got out of all of that. You know, and everything was okay. But then he came back about 2 years ago. He never came to a sound check, didn't do anything, couldn't be bothered to come to a sound check, got on the stage, was performing, and like halfway through the first number, went over. Now in the music hall, we have young people that are interested in getting into the music business and learning things either about the way the music hall is run, or learning about how to do the sound, how to mix and things. They have scholarships that go there. And it's great. And we had one young guy, he hadn't been there very long, and he was on the monitors that night. Now, take into account that the monitor, he hadn't done a sound check in the afternoon. So the poor guy is up doing the monitors, but halfway through like the first number, this person went over on the mic to the monitor guy, and, "What the fuck are you doing, you asshole? Why can't you get me my," you know? And I went, oh no. I mean, you know, it's something you don't do. I thought, you know, when you've been in the business for 50 years, you know, and you don't do that, especially when it's your fault because you haven't done a sound check. And I went to him afterwards, and I just told him exactly what I felt, you know, and I said, "I hope you never, you know," I said, you know, "I thought you'd grown up." I said, "I saw you a few years ago, you know, that's it." And like you say, you know, you think that, but like you say, people on the way down again maybe can revert to their former selves, you know.
I think the key, Blue, is treat everybody with respect. Because if you
Yeah,
treat we're all human. As Madonna said in her bath, talking about the current situation,
well,
this is the great equalizer. It's affected us all. We're all at home. We've all got our insecurities. We've all got the issues to deal with in our lives. If
yeah,
you treat everybody with respect, that's not a bad place to start, is it?
yeah. I respect the rosebud bath. You know, we all do that.
Right.
Yeah,
And
right in the bath with a bottle of champagne and rose.
no,
You know,
that's got to be good. That's got to be good. And Phil,
Make fantastic. You know, we're all the same. We're all.
and the other
No,
thing
that's
as
yeah.
well.
But I mean, I know the message. But
Yeah. And the other thing as well is so often perception and reality are not aligned. And
yeah,
what I find is a key element, you should question everything. In this business, as well as various other places, people, for whatever reason, want to spin a story about you. If you want to, they always say, it's the old Barnum quote, that if you want to draw a crowd, start a fight. So
right.
people very publicly have these big spats with each other, and the press love it. It's all about sensationalism.
It's like the boxers that glare at each other and pretend, go and start a fight before the fight. They built it
Of
up.
course,
Everybody
press
wants.
love it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think that the thing is two things on that. Is one, people should question everything. Never believe everything you read. I mean, at home, I encourage our children to get our news from every possible source. So we'll
everything.
watch the BBC, we'll watch Fox News, we'll watch Sky, we watch RT, we watch Al Jazeera, and you see the twists on
Yeah, I
all the
do the
different
same
stories.
here, actually. I have two satellites. I have the British one that picks up all the Al Jazeera and all the Italian news, French, everything. CNN, Fox. Actually, it's great watching Fox and then watching CNN.
Right. No, but it's fascinating, isn't it? Because
It
you
is.
see
It's
the
amazing.
variation, and now because you have the ability to get your news from more than one source, it's great. What I love about Trump, and not many people use that in the same sentence, but what I love about him is he can control his own narrative because he tweets, and so he will tell people what he really thinks, and he's got a way of sort of working on that sort of basis. So watch this space. There will be, I reckon, a TNN, a Trump news network, where he will have the ability to tell his story directly.
Yeah. Well, Fox already tell it for him, I think. Yeah. But actually, that's one of the best comedy shows on TV. 12 o'clock every night. I'm on CNN waiting for him to come on, and it's unbelievable.
It is incredible. And the other thing which is incredible is Hollywood, and people have been talking about this. They say we're surprised about the current situation. We're not. Because what's happened, if you look back over history, people have talked about it. There's a famous quote from Obama, again, was talking about, be careful, this is what's going to happen. You've had Bill Gates talking about it. Movies in Hollywood, I don't know if you've seen the film Contagion, but the
Yes.
Contagion, without being a spoiler, talked exactly about this situation, how quickly it could spread, the problems about PPE, the problems about distancing, the whole thing about what R means, and so on and so forth. All of these are there. And what I found really impressive is that all the people who were constitutional experts a few months ago, a few weeks ago, all of a sudden are now big virologists, aren't they? Everybody wants to be an armchair expert on this.
Yes. Actually, watching Trump, it was really funny when you see the panel of experts, and they were slowly diminishing. And the one time when who was it? When standing right behind Trump, and he put his hand over his mouth. Then you never saw him for a while. But the night when the disinfectant was mentioned, they all know what's the lady's name. She was sat on the side. They all know there's cameras on them all the time because I'm sure he analyzes everything
Yeah.
afterwards. But literally, you saw her toes curl. She couldn't make any expression with her face, and you saw the feet going.
But again, that was a classic example, Blue, of where the media manipulated what he said. Because if actually people bothered to watch what he actually said at the press conference, I know it's easy, it's an easy thing to knock, but what he actually says, oh, can we look at this and can we look at that and can we look at something else? Because it's the most refreshing, the best interviews I've seen have been from the scientists who give you the facts. So
Yeah,
we had over here a scientist, Dr. Sarah, who was brilliant on what we had the Andrew Marr show over here. And she was explaining to people about the science behind it, what we're looking
yeah,
for, this is the elements and things like that, rather than the political answers, which tend to be
yes.
clouded, if you like, in, hang about, I've got to get re-elected and therefore I can't really answer the question, but I've got to tell people that I'm doing something.
I saw a wonderful thing on Facebook that somebody had posted from a scientist explaining everything in the easiest form possible to understand. And it was brilliant. And I actually saved it because I thought that he explained everything about it, and in a scientific way and in a fact, and also what was factual and what was only not yet known, but they think this
Yeah.
could be, and he told you exactly straight. Okay, we think it can be this way, but we don't know.
Yeah.
And
Well, and
and
it's better to say that you don't know. So her name was Sarah Gilbert, and brilliant. And I wrote to her and said actually it was one of the most refreshing interviews that I've seen in all of this because it was facts. I love it. Just give us the facts.
yeah,
Opinions are one thing. We've all got an opinion, but here are the facts. This is what it means from a scientific point of view. Because everybody says follow the science, but when you look at it around the world, what's happening is people are getting different advice. You know, in Australia, they're out. In Sweden, they're out. In your places, you say it's decided by different areas and so on and so forth.
You know, it's
And
basically,
nobody, either they've got to share the data, share the information. And as I said beforehand, learn from the lessons of history.
yeah, and learn from, you know, um, unfortunately, musicians don't always do that, you know, and
But it's, I mean, you say
difficult.
that, Lou, as you say, you led the traditional, stereotypical rock and roll lifestyle, as we discussed last time in our mammoth 4-hour, really emotional roller coaster session. You talked about, with honesty, about the drugs, the temptation of the alcohol, the women, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It was all in that 4 hours, and there were tears, and there were laughter, and everything else. People nowadays coming into the profession, what happens is you get thrown in there, you are manufactured, if you like, to be a star. As soon as that then disappears, your support mechanism disappears with it, doesn't it? And
Yes,
you can go
exactly.
from rags to riches again, as you did.
But you know, there's one thing that I learned right from the beginning, and I found on tour this time I was still doing it. I was speaking to Dennis. Ron King always instilled into us we were nice guys. He said, "You go and you behave. You're polite to the people." He said, "You never say you won't sign an autograph. You never, you know, you do this." And he said, if you go into, in the beginning we were playing smaller places, he said if you go into a club or you go somewhere and it's a terrible dressing room, he said leave it nicer than what it was when you first went in. And you know, in this tour at the end, without thinking, I'm going around the dressing, I'm picking up bottles, I'm doing this, I'm putting that, and it's incredible how once it's put into you at an early age, it's
But
there. And
it is great advice, isn't it? And because and they always say, the other thing they say in the business is be nice to the people on the way up, because they're the
yes,
same people you're going to meet on the way down.
exactly, yeah. And I've said, I've seen people arguing, you know, at concerts, maybe backstage, but with maybe a reporter there, or maybe somebody from the theatre themselves, a manager or something like that. And I go over and no, you know, you don't do this. You're there, you're polite, and
Well,
yeah.
there's a great campaign at the moment on the BBC about encouraging people to be nice, because there's a knock-on effect, and it starts with a school child texting one of her friends saying she had a nice haircut. And then the hairdresser was nice. I felt good about it. It was a nice haircut, even though it was a bit wonky. And she then told her boyfriend, who has a result, did something good, who has a result, spread the goodness, if you like, as opposed to the negativity. And what happens in this social media age, when we're all connected, is the temptation is to rubbish people. The temptation is to go for the
Oh,
sensational, to
it is.
assume that what somebody says about somebody else is true.
Mm,
And it's easy then, whether it's a gossip or whether it's a bit of scandal or whether it's this terrible car crash of an interview or whatever tends to happen, all of those sort of things, people like negativity. And
do,
if
you,
we can switch the message to a positive one, the world will be a better place.
do you know what really upsets me? And I'm not saying because my political views changed. I had um, obviously I was brought up strict Labour. You know, vote, vote, vote for Georgie Thomas.
Welsh minor, I'd be surprised anything but.
And a docker. You know, I mean, we and the areas we lived in,
Yeah,
there wasn't any other, there wasn't anything else.
yeah.
You know, and but what I see posts on Facebook, and you know, the one thing that really annoys me when people say the Tories, it's a derogative state. You know, what do we say about Labour? You don't get replies saying it's not the same. You know, the way that they use, anytime anybody uses Tories, they're using it in not a nice. I don't know where the actual where it comes from originally.
Well, it's the old historical sort of side of it. But interesting, and you make this good point, because words themselves can have, the construction of the words will basically have a negative connotation. So the word spit, for example, it's a very hard word. So
Right.
anytime you use that, it's sort of onomatopoeic. It's got that
You
sort of
can't
negative
fit
connotation.
nicely. Yes, yeah.
So when you talk about Tory, it sounds as though in that something you're sort of.
Yeah, but in written word as well, you can see exactly. You can visualize them saying it. You know, it's and um, yeah, it's. It amazes me how much anger there is in um, in people and what they write, and it comes from your upbringing as well.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. But the good thing, and there are good things about this, is that what happens is nothing unites people more than a common enemy.
Right.
And so
So the
if we
virus.
view this terrible situation as a common enemy, then I think the world will be a better place rather than trying to fight each other as to the best solution.
Yes, but it's difficult being you know, you can be a politician, you can be a writer, you can everything, and you can get your points over these days. But with music, it's really difficult because I mean, thankfully now we have a medium like this that we can communicate with people, but it's still not the same as being on a stage or being in a club and actually playing live to people and them experiencing um, you know, the way you feel and the way your music is coming from you, and trying to make the people happy or sad or whatever. You know, that's the one hard thing at the moment. I mean, I watched a concert a friend of mine gave last night with other musicians, and they were spaced 2 meters apart and everything live, but no audience. So they were playing the song, and at the end, and then they were going, okay, you know, they were clapping, they had to clap themselves, or the few crew that were there were, you know, like, okay. I mean, it was really, really strange because they were doing everything as you would do in a concert, perform and talk to the audience. But then at the end, they weren't getting any feedback. And this is what the most amazing thing when you're playing live is when you finish a song and you see the audience, you know, the way that the audience is and the way that they're enjoying it. They're up on their feet, and that's one thing that we can't get from um, performances on the internet, because it's practically impossible actually to play with another musician live over the medium because of there's always a delay, so you can't actually keep in time, and so it has to be recorded, and then one person has to put the bits together so everybody is playing. I think it's pretty amazing. I mean, there's orchestras that are doing it now. It's incredible. It's like they're actually playing live, but there's no two people actually playing at the same time, and yet they're together. You know, the conductor. It's I find that amazing.
It
And
is
I've been
wonderful
having
how they
videos
stitch that
last
all
week.
together. And I think what the medium has also done is brought us real local heroes, if you like. And we talked
Yeah.
earlier about Captain Tom Moore. And
Oh,
for those of you who don't know, and there might be somebody in a rock somewhere who hasn't heard of Captain Tom Moore, but 4 weeks ago, nobody had heard of him. And this
no.
was the guy who was 99 at the time, wanted to walk up and down his garden 100 times to raise money for the NHS. He set himself a modest target of only £1,000. And in the end, because he was all the right element, he was a hero in the war, he was 99, a great age group, he was doing his thing for the NHS. All the media exposure, rather than £1,000, he raised over £33 million for the NHS
Incredible.
and was all over the papers.
Yeah.
Not only that, Michael Ball, who he adored, then decided, okay, I'll record a single with uh, Tom Moore,
I
and it
always wanted
went
to
to number
read your
one, I'll
song.
Never Walk Alone.
Yes.
And what happened is Captain Tom Moore then was the oldest person ever to come to number one. It was on his 100th birthday, which was last week. And you know who was the oldest person before then? Because you were mentioning him earlier.
Oh, I don't
Oldest
know.
person had a number one before Tom Moore.
Uh, was it Tom Jones?
It was Tom Jones, who you mentioned beforehand with that glorious story. And Tom
God,
Jones
my brain's
was
still working.
about 20
Rewind
years
that bit.
younger on that sort of thing. And so what happened is, and Sir Tom is so gracious, he phoned up Tom Moore and his wonderful Welsh voice, which you'll be able to do tonight, and I wouldn't dare even attempt it. But he said he was so happy that Captain Tom managed to do that for his birthday. And Captain Tom has now been promoted, an honorary. He's now an honorary colonel. And the only sad thing about this situation is he missed out Major Tom, because I would have loved that. That would have been a great single.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, I still always want to say Major Tom
I
because
know you do. You know, ground control. Where are you? It's got to be good.
World control. Yeah, yeah, it was
Luke,
amazing.
it's always a joy to see you. Thank you for beautiful words. And if there are words, if you want to just finish with people, I say history repeats itself all the time. People living through the same situation, through the situation which you've dealt with your career, finish off with your fine words. What words of advice would you give them?
Oh, I I can never think of things when I'm in a situation like this. Um, I think I don't know. Be kind. Um, that's the first thing that comes to mind is be kind with people. And sometimes you see somebody and you've drawn an opinion of them before you even know them or before sometimes they even speak. And I'm these days I'm amazed. Um, I that's happened to me a lot where I've looked at somebody and I've thought, oh, you know, oh God, there's a right idiot there. And then I've gone and suddenly I've spoken to them and they've opened their mouth and I've just been amazed, you know. And I'm thinking, you know, God, why did I think that? Just because of the way somebody looked and the way, and then I made this preconceived idea about them. I never gave them a chance, you know. And I think I try not to do that anymore, you know. And yeah, I mean, and if I mean, I can give parents some advice. Um, I think it's always good to have a musical instrument in the house of some sort, no matter what, because you never know if you don't. You I suppose this applies to a lot of things, but when I think back, if if my brothers hadn't sang, if my parents had never got a piano, I wouldn't be here doing this now, you know. And it was only the fact that there was a piano in the house. Um, Maybe with somebody else, it wouldn't have been the same. I mean, in my class in my school, in the whole year, there was only two of us that played the piano, you know. And back in those days, all the front rooms in Cardiff had pianos of some state or another. I don't know why. It was a sort of status symbol, I suppose, even if people didn't play. It was. I used to get invited round for dinner and things to friends' houses just because their parents wanted me to sit and play the piano. And I think um, no matter how big or small, if there's something there that they can try and maybe find. I don't know, I'm rambling a little bit now, but I mean, I believe that every home should have a piano and a guitar, you know, and because you never know what's going to happen in the future. And even if they don't take it up as a profession, it's something in later life, even if you've learned when you're young, that you can do that can relax you and can give you pleasure and and maybe your partner and other people.
Absolutely. Music be the food of love, play on.
Play on, yeah, definitely.
Do Weaver, be kind, be safe, be alert is the new advice that we're getting. But for now, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye. And that's it for tonight. Thank you for joining us again here live and exclusive on behalf of KTT and GSI. I've been Andrew Eborn. If you do have any comments, put them in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe to Octopus TV and join me next time. Thank you for calling. Bye-bye.